Hello, lovelies. Right, housekeeping. I am back at working at Ronin Book 2, and I am maybe halfway through the yokai section. There's a lot of repetition in Japanese myth, particularly of assorted goblins. So I'm actually finding it's a lot less work than I thought it was, because there is very little other than behaviour or location to differentiate between these many different type of Japanese goblins. Maybe that explains the at least part of the Japanese sort of affinity for goblins in their media. I don't know, but yeah, it's turning out to be slightly less work than I thought, which was nice. The tentative plan for the immediate future is to produce a bunch of short stuff for various things, keep plugging away at Ronin, which should have been finished early this year, but this year has been a son of a bitch, and see how things go there. So there's that. I might try a few other things as well. For everyone who helped with the fundraiser for my friend who was a victim of domestic violence, you'll be happy to know that the money has now been dispersed to her, and she should be using that money to get moved into a proper place rather than a fly-by-night Airbnb. We were just in a hurry before to get her somewhere safe, so something more long-term should be good. So all of the money has now been received and dispersed, and I just want to thank everybody yet again for helping out with all that. Machinations Media continues apace, and I really should spend more time promoting them, but these are the guys who've spun off some stuff from my Machinations of the Space Princess game and are putting out things, including game notes from my games every other week over on Grim Streams. And there should be one this weekend, which reminds me I need to finish preparing. So there's that. Some of you will have noticed there's been a bit of a hiatus on Etherpunk, which is the Safe for Work project I've been doing with the Not Safe for Work Tabletopless crew. That should be returning in some form, but we've got some development decisions to make, which will probably take place on stream. So if you want to have any feedback for that sort of thing, keep an eye out for Etherpunk streams, and we'll see where we go from there. But we do intend to pick up where we left off. Alright, comments. On the Iron Eagle review, Songplay Gaming Cartel, the creator, says, author here, thanks a lot for checking out my game. Very much enjoyed watching the video, even if it was a negative one. That's quite alright. I do know you're left-wing. That doesn't stop me from enjoying your content and requesting a review. Made my day seeing the video pop up. Keep making great stuff, man. I mean, I think your real problems with it are twofold. Right? One, Nazis, and two, layout. Rules-wise, it's fine. I mean, it's the Year Zero engine, and you've built that out into something that is a bit more suitable to military games. If you could somehow pull back on the fascism and maybe create a version from other points of view, like maybe you could have Iron Eagle, Red Bear for the Russians, and I don't know, something for the Americans, Frightened Trash Pandas or something, I don't know, or Radioactive Rabids or something. I would also suggest, however, losing the Confederate flag. That's probably even more contentious than the Nazis, because people unironically celebrate the Confederacy. in a way and an extent they don't for German fascism. But yeah, you've got stuff there that's worthwhile. It's just a shame that it's buried under furries and fascism. Why can't people silence their phones and things when they leave them in here? Paul G says, thanks for another review. Quick request though, any chance we could get a playlist that is just core rulebook reviews? Games playlist is a little saturated to sift through. Another for modules and expansions maybe, but core rulebooks would be pretty handy when looking for something new through you. Thanks again. I could, but that would be work, which I don't feel like. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm not sure whether putting things into playlists is worth it anymore to an extent. Because hardly anyone seems to use them. They seem to be an underused feature on YouTube. I mean, I stream in a different sense. I stream my various types of content into my various different playlists, rather than having separate channels, which I know is the wrong way to do it, but to me it seemed like a more elegant solution from a more civilized age. I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Cynocephalus says, if you want to try some other dieselpunk game with furries, I'm remembering Wild Skies Europa Tempest, and you may like it more, although I remember the system being a bit odd at first. What part of that review made you think that I like furries? I don't know. Alright, the philosophy of bears, which is a bit of an odd one, but it's been churning in my brain for weeks, months, possibly years. Aerosol Multiplier says, really enjoyed that. It was like a combination of Stuart Lee and Tim Vine. Sadly, try as I might, I can't think of any decent bear puns. My bear pun larder is empty. There. Just a bear of very little brain. Stuart Lee and Tim Vine. I'm quite flattered in both cases. Tim Vine delivers great one-liners and puns. He's really, really good at that. Really, and that's his act, basically. An endless string of dad jokes, which I appreciate for the artistry of it. To be compared, however obliquely and distantly, with Stuart Lee, however, is a great honour. Thank you. Monkey Delicious says, I'm now wondering whether this video essay is a coded commentary on Jeffrey Epstein, whose career of evil began at Bear Stearns. Well, stern bears are worse. The litany of ursine wordplay fails to disguise the inescapable allusions to unbearable horror. No, but you know what? The Epstein files should be released. And he didn't kill himself. On the diversity and dragon video, how dare I punch back at all at some cheap little drama nonce. I don't know. Anyway, Jerusalem has come, says, our virtue is not your shield. You have no virtue. If it was a shield, it would barely be a buckler. Paul Cooper says, it's now called consequence culture. You invented cancel culture, we're just using your own tactics against you and far more effectively. What do you mean, you? Right? Because for a very, very long time I have been very staunchly against cancel culture. Consistently. Right? Applying the same standard. Constantly and consistently. And for the last little while I have been warning that the right is becoming as censorious as the pseudo left. And lo and behold, here we are. But my consistency seems to count for nothing for you, does it? The fact that I've been against cancel culture and I've pointed out how ridiculous that whole consequence argument is. Now, it counts for absolutely nothing. So you're left wondering, well, why bother? Right? I've been consistent and unmoving on this, and yet here you are excusing the right kind of cancel culture and the right kind of gun violence typically and the right kind of hatred, whereas I've been consistent. So who is coming off as a bit of a cunt here? Ain't me. Paul Cooper then says, Jim, never speak ill of the recently dead. It's unseemly and beneath you as a decent human being. And the only people who really supported you over the long years, the lefties used you as a punching bag, you know, people more right-leaning. You're about to lose that audience and start being attacked from both sides. That is a place no one wants to be. I might not want to be there, but at the end of the day, the only person you have to be able to live with is yourself, not these ideologues who only care about what you did today and not what you have done your entire life, or at the very least the preceding decade, right? I explicitly set out in my video on Charlie Kirk exactly what I was doing and why, and how I was interrogating my own ambivalence, right? And I said it is important in these instances to remember someone as they actually were and not to allow death to beatify them into some sort of saint, right? I explicitly and in some detail, and may I say with some erudite capacity, exactly what I was doing and why I was doing it, what my motivations were. And yet we have comments like this. Right? The man was awful. He was to politics what Ray Comfort is to Christianity. Right? And to Christianity, come to that. He was a hate-filled, nasty human being. If you were drawn in by his debate me shtick, I don't know what to tell you. It's a propagandist tactic. Right? The few times that he came up against people who were actually prepared, he got his arse handed to him on a silver platter with a fork stuck in it. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all illusion. It's a platform for him to spread his hate and division, which is now being reaped, though I doubt he saw himself as being made into a martyr. I mean, people are getting fired or let go or hounded or even harassed by the state, even arrested, for things as little as quoting the guy's own words without further commentary. So what does that tell you? Yeah, and in full context. Errors will multiply says, why on earth am I slightly surprised by the fact that the right-wing free speech warriors are absolute and total hypocrites? I remember back when there was a bit of controversy about certain 100% fictional drawings and writing being illegal, and Cunt Wankula and his flying free speech monkeys unironically told me that they would be fine with banning fictional books if they contained the wrong fictional material, but only banning some fictional books, and only those fictional books that are really, really, really dodgy. So it's fine, we're still free speech warriors. God, it's all just different when we do it, tribalism now. Almost nobody actually meant any of it, did they? All that Gamergate, skepticism, critical consistency stuff a few years back, it was all just absolute bollocks, wasn't it? It wasn't absolute bollocks. I mean, there's you, there's me, Nick Goroff, who I've been chatting a bit to recently. He, I think, shares our exhaustion and disappointment. The Amazing Atheist has remained pretty consistent. Jeff Holiday, I think, has remained fairly consistent, though he's less active lately. You know, there were people who said it and meant it, and there were a lot of grifters who were either audience captured or saw a way to make money, and now they have houses and children and things that they have to take care of, so they kind of have to keep the grift going. That's me being incredibly generous and accommodating. And Charlie Kirk is just the biggest one of those grifters, or was the biggest one of those grifters. So, Ultra TTRPG says, Now, not so fun when the shoe is on the other foot, is it? You got us fired, all because we wouldn't recognise mental illness or put untested vaccines in our bodies. You're all getting fired for actual hate speech and cheering over someone being assassinated. We are not the same. No, we're not the same. I'm not a massive hypocrite who's squealing like a stuck pig. I've been consistent. You're not being consistent. I condemned when it was the other side doing this. I condemn it now. You're excusing it because what you think are the right people are doing it. Right? By mental illness, presumably you mean trans people, but don't dare say it. Yeah, gender dysphoria is a mental illness, but many mental illnesses have physical causes, neurological causes, causes rooted in the brain or the body or otherwise. It doesn't make them any less, and it doesn't mean you can just think yourself out of it. Medical intervention, even for these things, is justified. And the vaccines weren't untested, and they've proven to be effective and safe. And it's not just the COVID vaccines, which you would be wrong about, but people are being hesitant about very tried and tested vaccines that have been around for years and years and years and years and years, going all the way back. Right? They even made changes to the formulation of the MMR vaccine, which wasn't even necessary to try and assuage the fears of anti-vax people. No, we're not the same. I'm consistent. You're not. You're tribalistic. I'm not. On the video, where does the right start? Boss Bully Boy says, wow, you're ridiculous these days. The right begins with Locke and doesn't deviate after the French Revolution, as the left does. That flag, meaning the stars and bars, is only right wing. I think you've muddled yourself up there. Actually is a symbol of anti-federalist, anti-central planning. Everything else in the South was entirely leftist in its collectivist social models. No, you had a nascent aristocracy. It was all to do with money from agriculture. You had a strict racial hierarchy. These are all marks of right-wing ideology. So you're just wrong there, really. Though if you're swallowing the "it's actually about states' rights" line, then you're probably too far gone. On the video about Unite the Kingdom, Humphreys Fox says, I wonder what it is about left-leaning folks that they're completely unable to acknowledge any reason for these types of protests when a blind eye are turned to their own. I'm saying this as someone who is neither left nor right on any particular issue, but I'm aghast at the hypocrisy and selective framing around every damn issue. Well, that march, which was only 100,000 people, was on every news channel and sparked endless discussion, while the much, much bigger pro-EU march that I went on, which had over 1 million people at it, possibly a lot more, got barely a peep of coverage. So I don't know quite what you mean there. But these protests, people painting roundabouts, shouting at hotels, and this march of 100,000 people in London who had like 4 teeth and 2 GCSEs between the lot of them. These so-called legitimate concerns are not legitimate concerns. We don't have mass immigration. Grooming gangs are neither exclusively nor even majoritively from the Pakistani community. Crime and so on is fairly evenly distributed. If the population were 50% white, it's a lot more than that. Then the crime is about 50% white, right? That's how it tends to break down. And immigrants are actually less likely to commit crimes, probably because their immigration status means they keep things on the straight and narrow and keep a clean nose. right? So all of these things that they're worried about, whether it's the effect on jobs or wages or the NHS or crime or paedophilia or all of it, is absolute bollocks. There is no substance to any single thing. And all the things that they're worried about have been getting better lately, but they're not getting less upset. So it's put ungently, it's absolute bullshit. No, and they're mugs. On Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, RPG Gen Exile says, "You're so low information, it's shocking." Well, that's my RDA of irony for the day. Your grasp of reality and facts is non-existent. Again, every accusation is an admission. Another zombie sucking on the teat of legacy media. Nope. While locked in an echo chamber. Nope. Of his own bias and surrounded by the like. Again, no. I mean, it's a stereotype, but yeah, every accusation is a confession. Also, clean your frickin' nose out, dude. Well, thank you for pointing out that I have a single white hair in one of my nostrils. I'll be sure and deal with that immediately. Why are you staring right up my nose? I don't know. Do you have some kind of weird nasal fetish? Whatever the case, go stick your head in a pig. Midnight Green Gaming, who's been ranting all week, I think, says, "You all killed the nice guy. America now has 10,000 Charlie Kirks." Well, you already had many more charlatans and Bible-thumping nonsense preachers and far-right political spokespeople even before he was killed. I think they just feel emboldened to be dickish in public. He was not in any way a nice guy, though. Christian nationalist, carried water for the fascistic Trump regime, anti-LGBT, spread anti-vax propaganda, spread doubt about the 2020 election, excused violence, condemned empathy. I could go on and on and on and on, but you're not as stupid as you act in my comments section. You know that he said absolutely horrendous, awful things that have led to people's deaths. Anti-vax sentiment leads directly to people's vaccine hesitancy, which then leads to disease and death. And the divisive rhetoric and everything helps lead to the very violence that led to his long-range amateur tracheotomy. So David M says, regarding whether the Second Amendment protects against tyranny, I would say it hasn't done nearly a good enough job, but we still have free speech and you don't. Maybe we could discuss or debate it if your king grants you permission when he's not busy jailing people for memes. Obviously I'm being a little silly by writing things that way, just a little trolling, but it is the reality of the situation. No, it's not. We were talking about low information voters, or just low information people earlier. America has this weird concept promulgated by the far right and liars in the same vein as Charlie Kirk, that it is this hugely oppressive structure. It is not, and the king has zero political power, by the way. Yet we don't have a Second Amendment. We are not routinely armed, but then nor are our police. The speech policing, which people seem to get so up in arms about, is rarely as it is being presented. It's usually, other than a warning or a nice friendly visit from the police, which is a waste of their time, I'll admit, but usually if there's anything more, all it is because that person has been engaged in a long-term set of harassment that just happens to have taken place online. So it's not jailing people for memes, it is jailing people, if at all, for a pattern of intensive trolling and harassment that sometimes involves real life as well as online. Otherwise, it's generally speaking just a caution or something. It might be a little bit more if they're a local politician, because it's more serious if it's a local politician. But I don't think you're in any position to argue when you now have Trump using the full power of the state to get late night comedians taken off air. People have been arrested for merely quoting Charlie Kirk in his own words, or being insufficiently sad. You've got a masked, plainclothes secret police force going around ripping people away from their families and shipping them off to camps. What are you even talking about? If someone gets arrested because they have repeatedly sent hateful memes and death threats to someone, I think some kind of response is probably justified. But using the power of the state to crack down on people with different political opinions doesn't seem so free and God bless the Constitution to me. That you can't see it is quite worrying. Double Crit Fail says, very eloquently said, and I hear the echoes of Christopher Hitchens in your words. That's 2 bits of flattery in the comments. I'll try to concentrate on those. The fact that Charlie Kirk fans get offended when you quote Charlie Kirk's own words back to them just about wraps up all that can be said about his rhetoric. And it's terrible that a person was killed while practicing free speech, and I suspect ultimately this will do more harm than good in broader American culture. Still, I'm not going to pretend, though, that he was universally loved or that his life mattered more than the tens of thousands of other lives lost per year due to gun violence, most of whom received no attention whatsoever. And let's not forget that he excused that as a worthwhile price for the Second Amendment, which would supposedly protect people from tyranny. Now he's dead to gun violence, and his death is being used as an excuse for speeding up the tyranny, to such an extent that even people like Tucker Carlson are slamming on the brakes a little bit and saying, whoa, Trump, this might be going a little too far. That's an interesting development. So I'll be watching that with interest to see if this divide in the right continues. On the Exodus review, Mathwaquin, I think, says, first of all, Red Dwarf had a universe with no aliens, so please do it. Do it again, do it your way. Second of all, I'm terminally online and I heard about this game 4 days ago. This has the stink of a movie being buried or news being pushed out on Friday, and I didn't even realise that role-playing games could do that. Thanks for your breakdown. I don't know what is going on with that, because it seems to be this whole franchise model that they're supposedly moving towards, and yet they seem to have put zero effort into getting it in front of people. So I don't know what's going on with that. Alright, lastly, our old favourite, the Kalergi Plan videos. What in the Fudge says, ugly demonic creep makes sense, which left my head spinning a little bit. But setting us back on a more conventional course, third time's the charm says, die and rot in hell. And so, let's draw things to a close with that, shall we? Zang. It's been called misogynistic, racist, a hate group, reactionary. It's been blamed for Trump, for keeping women out of games and technology. None of this is true. If you want the real story, then you need to buy Inside Gamergate.